Hi, it's Carrie Kenner, and welcome to my weekly vlog. So it's April, and that means a new theme for the month. Each month, I try to have a new theme that kind of focuses the content that I'm developing and what I'm talking about and what I'm thinking about. And so January, it was all about getting started. Where did our passions and inspiration come from? February, we moved into organizing and marketing and talking about how we get out there, which led into March, which was a lot about being seen and goal setting and setting plans for ourselves to move forward. And this month is about growth and expansion. So I'm going to be talking all month about different ways that individuals and businesses can make themselves evolve, transform, go into bigger things, and some ways that we can do that. So thought I would start with, how did I grow my business? So I'm going to take you back to 2001 when I started my business, Big Belly Services. There was a nascent internet, no Wix, no Squarespace, no online courses. If you wanted to start a business and get all the information, you had to get really resourceful. And the way I looked at it is, either you were going to be a DIYer or you were going to have money and pay someone to do it for you. Well, I didn't have money, so I went to the Small Business Administration and took free classes on how to do finances for business. And I got a book and learned how to build a website. And I didn't know anything about marketing. That was years to come still. And I designed and printed forms in my home office on my printer. So it was a very bootstrap, start from scratch type business that I began. Now, I also want to set some context for the beginning of my business. I had a newborn baby. I had just turned 40. My father had just died 2 months ago while I was 8 months pregnant. And then a few weeks after he died, I got laid off from the company I'd been with for 16 years. So there was a lot going on. And you'll often hear people say that out of adversity comes great positive change. And that's what happened for me. It basically opened a doorway that I'd been wanting to step through for many years, which was starting my own business. I didn't know what I was going to start that business on. I actually thought it was going to be either as a race director or an event planner or a wedding planner. But instead, because I was pregnant and I was in the world of birth, I heard about a birth doula, blah, blah, blah. I became one. So here's how it unfolded. Starting in April of 2001, I took a doula training, a birth doula training. Everything was in person at that time. And I was fortunate to live in Seattle, where we had in-person doula training. So with my 4-month-old baby, I went to my online doula training. 2 months later, I went to a birthing from within childbirth educator training. When my son was 9 months old, I started offering my first childbirth classes. When he was 11 months old, I went to my first birth as a doula. So it was a pretty rapid movement of starting this business and doing the things. Now, I was really fortunate, and you may have heard me talk about this before, but my midwives said, hey, why don't you start childbirth classes? We'll refer our clients to you and you can teach them in our waiting room. So I had some really nice connections that kind of helped me get started. But it was also an area of passion. I had wanted to be a midwife since my first child was born 20 years before. And I'd been a childbirth educator when I was much younger, but a very different style of education that didn't fit with me where I was at that time in life. So things were lining up really nicely for me. Now, some other things you should know is that I am a diehard do-it-yourselfer. So I spent hours and hours and hours in my basement office with my baby in a sling strapped to my chest, either napping or nursing. As it got older, he'd be playing at my feet. But I really did create everything from scratch. Forms, brochures, my website. I remember when I got my first online sale when I hadn't talked to anyone and there was just money that came in. Man, I thought I was the shit. I thought I had hit the jackpot. This was the greatest thing since sliced bread. And I had these early wins that certainly helped me to grow and expand. Plus, I'm just really creative, really resourceful, really dedicated. I have a lot of energy. I get shit done. I'm 63 now. I still get shit done. And I kind of still work on the same principle, only now there's so many more tools at our disposal. So I'm teaching childbirth classes. And the people in the classes ask if I'd be their doula. So I'm starting to go to these births as a doula. And my business just kept slowly growing. It wasn't like crazy land, but there was definitely a nice stream of people that were coming my way. And as other nurses or doctors or midwives heard of me from their clients who had taken my birth classes, I started to get more doula referrals. And then those doula referrals turned into more childbirth education referrals. And so my business was growing nicely. Now, I don't want you to think that there weren't months when I had to cancel childbirth classes because one person or nobody signed up for them, because that happened. But I do want you to know that I probably attended 15 births in my first year. So that would have been in 2002, and then 25 births. And then I kind of just held at a steady 25 births or more from then on. And with my birth classes, I was teaching one evening a week for 6 weeks or a weekend immersion. So I'd kind of alternate those every month. And then it started to be more people coming in. And there was also other professionals in the community that also wanted to teach for me. So I started to offer classes 2 nights a week and every weekend a month instead of every other weekend a month. So I brought in another teacher. Over time, I brought in a second teacher. Over time, I brought in a third teacher. And I kind of left and stopped teaching the classes myself, but I was running this childbirth class business. I hired an assistant that managed all of our registrations and communications with students. And then in 2004, I was approached to learn how to be a doula trainer alongside Penny Simkin. I mean, it doesn't get much better than getting to learn from kind of the godmother of the doula world. So I became a birth doula trainer as well. By 2008, I created my own doula training curriculum. I was teaching it for myself, and I was also being asked to come to different places around the country to train doulas in their communities as well. So things were growing very nicely for me. By 2015, I closed my childbirth education business entirely. I was done doing that, and I was really focusing on being a doula and training doulas. By 2017, I started to offer my doula trainings virtually. So people locally could attend live and people from around the country could attend via Zoom. And by 2018, I put an entire doula training online. When folks said it couldn't be done, of course it could be done. And around that time, I retired as a birth doula and I was simply training doulas. I had a birth doula training in a number of different formats. I was traveling around the country doing this doula training, and I had a number of advanced doula trainings as well. So, what I want you to notice from this kind of trajectory is that there was a gradual buildup. There were points where not just I wanted to do more, but people in my community were recognizing what I was doing and came to me. So it's that combination of, being self-made and also having good word of mouth and getting good referrals and getting tapped on the shoulder to, hey, would you come and do this with us? That's a sign that your business is growing and that you are getting yourself established as an expert or a leader in your field. And one of the other things I want you to notice is that the format, the way that I was teaching, the thing that I was teaching, it also evolved over time. This was like a 18-year process of building and growing and trimming away things that were no longer working and trying new things and adopting new technology and doing different things, but it took time. One of the things that I see now that I think is really interesting is that that timeline of growing, evolving, developing that expertise and that leadership is like a really short time frame for a lot of people who are on the online space right now. They were maybe a doula for a few years and now they're training doulas, hundreds of doulas online. And I just, it's really curious to me. The I mean, I'm impressed with the chutzpah that it takes to do that. I'm curious about the money that it takes to do that. And I wonder about the quality that it takes to do that. Because what I've seen in my lifetime, and granted, I'm older. I wasn't raised with the technology, wasn't raised with everything being super fast like it is today. Or I certainly didn't grow up with having access to people from around the world doing a gazillion things instantaneously. That's just changed completely how we think about what we're going to follow, what we're going to believe. So, what I think is really interesting is what I've observed from really masterful teachers, which I consider myself one. One of the things, like I had to study for years about adult education theory, like how do adults learn? What are all the different ways that they learn? What's the psychology of learning, not for children, but for grown-ups, because that was the audience that I was teaching. And then as things became online, I was one of the early adopters. I created the first hybrid program at Bastyr University for training childbirth educators. And I had to learn about online education and the theory and the psychology behind that. What kinds of things work? What kind of things don't work? So I'm not, like a fly by night. Like I put a lot of hours, education, training, experience, trial and error into developing the things that I ultimately developed. And I wonder if folks who have kind of always had access to that just know by being immersed in it, what's good and what's not good. That's very possible. I know for me, because I wasn't immersed in it, that it took, there was a learning curve for me. The other thing, though, that I've observed from watching, real experts in a field is their mastery of of the content, their knowledge. I often say they could teach things out of a box. They could be inside a box and they could be online, and you get their charisma, their energy, their wisdom, the nuance of everything that they've embodied that transmits out of a box or across the airwaves. And somebody who's new at it doesn't have that. Like I've done the double hip squeeze hundreds of times. I've taught it thousands of times. So I know how to describe it in words and pictures and demonstrations and the camera angles and all the different nuanced ways to describe where to find the landmarks and what you feel and what the person should feel and how to ask about that. Like just all the intricate pieces of teaching one technique because of my years of teaching in person. And I'd love to hear from you if you notice the difference between somebody who hasn't been in the trenches a long time to have kind of developed their chops, the personal finesse of doing different things before they're teaching it. I'd love to hear that. And I'd love to be proven wrong because I want what people are finding out there to be in terms of online education to be the best. I don't want the public who's overwhelmed with choices to be confused, not know which ones they should pick, and pick one that actually isn't very good. I'm not watching everything that's out there. I'm just paying attention to the people who are talking about the courses who are out there and saying, they seem really new and perky. But I'm old and perky, so I think it all balances out. Anyways, I'd love to hear from you what you're seeing in the trends of online education or just where education in general is going. And I'd also love to hear about how your business started and how it's grown and the direction that you're taking it in. Because I'm all about the business. If I can help in any way, Go to my profile and click on my link tree, and you'll find a bunch of different ways to contact me. I'm always ready to help people out with figuring out the business that they want to start, help the business they're in grow, or help market different services and products that they've got. That's what I'm all about. And I hope you have a great week. Good being with you. Bye.